UVs. You can take this piece, mapping, planar mapping, and just unfold that and lay out. Now you can see how quickly we can switch between Marmoset and Maya, which is great. I'm gonna lower that offset. I mean up the offset. It's not gonna give us a great result because it's not matching well with topology. But it's good enough to give us like an idea of what it's gonna look like. And change this sky. Don't like the colors we're getting. Like go for something more neutral. Like this one. We can go here and we can lower the saturation if we want to. So make sure it's all black and white. Let's up the brightness a bit. Maybe go to render and ambient occlusion. I can see we have a pretty nice preview of what our mesh is going to look like. You can see that already looks pretty decent. I'm just looking at the shape, at the faceting that we're getting. I think that's enough resolution. So what we have to do now, take a step back, let's go here and we can say select and harden these edges. It's gonna give us a little bit of a better preview there. Later we'll change some of those to baffles. But now that we have this, actually let's go back one step. Instead of subdividing it twice, let's start with one subdivision first. It's going to make it a little bit more manageable to work with. Now here we can edit topology, like unnecessarily edges it's added that we don't need. Now we can start bringing up those verts to match the surface. I'm gonna click here, it's still a live surface. It's soft select and component. Now we can just move this up. Let's do this everywhere. Sure we don't influence those. So now let's focus a little bit more on the features. Let me undo that a little bit. Actually first work on this part. Just like that, the topology that was bothering me now isn't bothering me any longer. You can see how we can cut in now those features that I was talking about earlier. We can be pretty carefree with topology because again it doesn't need deformation. So topology doesn't need to be perfectly clean, which is great. And get rid of those. Gonna move this stuff over here. See some stuff messed up there, let's get rid of those. Now we can add an extra edge here. Let's not. You just want to place edges to make stuff look more squared. So you want to try to get as squared as you can. They look. You can really see how we start working with our base and deforming it to capture the detail of our low. Then we can refine topology like this, that's very ugly looking. Then we can change to a triangle maybe. And something like this. And remember, we still need subdivided ones. So as soon as we do that, that's gonna add quite a lot of resolution. So sometimes when you're working, you just want to take what you currently have. So I have this right now. Do subdivision to quickly see. Should have this on one though, to quickly see how that's gonna look like. You can see now here this looks pretty okay. But still, after this we can still edit it to add more. And then do some edit edge flow and whatever. And then this one will be your final topology. Let's undo a little bit. So start doing this on the feature. You can see that we're pretty much using the same mentality as when we're sculpting. We block everything out. This is our primary block out. Then the subdivision, we start adding more and more detail to the whole thing. I don't want to come in one part and start some really tedious retop process and then be really low and finish all that. And start adding a very nice bevel and giving that thickness. That's a very slow and painful way to work. Instead of that, I want to work on the whole piece as one. That's gonna be way faster and enjoyable, more enjoyable to work with. And take this whole edge, go to world, this off. Let's make sure it's on the center line. And take this and edit that edge flow. Usually after edit edge flow, you need to inflate a little bit to match the surface again. Just move this guy, edit this edge flow. Again, this spot's gonna be a little bit challenging as we added a gap in the height. I do think it's nice to also have some gaps. I don't like how this topology flows here. If we take a look here, right now it's going like this. I prefer a topology that's more horizontally, so I think that looks a lot nicer and cleaner. So we can just do this. We can do edge, just clean that out. Now we can see the reason why it isn't horizontal though, because it creates a lot of squares. See if we can kind of fix that by editing edge flow here and there. I like how this flows. I think it looks pretty nice and clean. But now here it starts to get a little bit iffy. Since I mentioned that thing that we have here. I think this kind of works. Disable this. Try edge. I don't think that works. I'm gonna leave it like this, and after subdividing we'll get into a bit more detail there. It's like a nice part of doing subdivisions. We can leave stuff for later when we have more resolution to work with. As you can see, if we now go here, I'm gonna get that extra edge, and it's gonna make it a little bit easier to start filling out. This level I'm still mostly worried about blocking out flow and putting in features. So here we need an extra edge to capture this feature. Something like that works, I think. I think like that's a little bit nice to look at. This way it's also still very clear that it's like a retop surface, because you want it to be very different from this, so you know when you're working in one of the modes. So I'm just trying to get it to be more square-like. If you can't connect the points, you need to push it out a little bit. gonna add that extra one already here to even out the resolution a bit. You want to try to keep the resolution as even as you can across the whole mesh. And we need an extra one here. Definitely don't want it here. So maybe we can merge it up here together. As you can see now that resolution is a little bit more even again. Let's also start adding some of this thickness. Let's put some AO in here if you'd like to. So after doing those first, we need to line them up again. Get rid of the triangulation. Not entirely liking how that flows. It's better to have like triangles in the middle instead of at the border of the edge, because you're gonna have some shading issues if you do. Now you can see this is not nice and even. This doesn't look nice. So now we take this and all we do is edit edge flow. And you can see how that just makes the mesh look nice. Just going back and forth between putting stuff in and then editing that edge flow to make it nice. Then we can smooth it out again. Make sure everything's still snapping right. And edit edge flow just evens out the polys. So if you want a cut to stop somewhere, we can put an extra thingy so it doesn't go further. And just connect that and worry about it later. I'm just trying to capture that plane change in the low poly. Over here we don't really need it. We can merge that together and delete. And use it here though, if we want to. This kinda a bet of how much detail do you want to put into your low poly. I do like to put quite a lot of detail in my low poly for my personal projects. This can be low if you're working for a game project. But remember, all that we want to do is have a nice render at the end. Don't like to have any triangulation yet, as we still need to do a subdivision. If the goal is to make a nice render at the end, all that you want to worry about is that your topology is like technically right. And you can go pretty high. And with technically right, I mean like it's evenly squared, it's flowing nice. If it needs to deform, it has the ability to deform. You're capturing the low poly well with, let's say, let me just connect this up. Capturing the low poly well with having this point. Not be like here for the corner, but have it where it should actually be and all that kind of stuff. So when I'm doing low polys for a personal project, that's really my main concern. Being able to capture a nice shape for the low poly. You can see how everything just kind of falls into place, like you work on one piece and then becomes pretty obvious what should be the next thing to do. In this other place we have the triangle. Make sure it's not going too far in. So just like sculpting, you have to look at your topology from all angles and make sure it's working from all angles. This would probably be like a good topology if we're doing a game mesh. Maybe we're not quite UV. You can see how handy that export script comes in. It's just super fast to work with. Like if we're doing like an actual game mesh that we're gonna put in your game, I'd probably go with something like this for resolution. You can see that works pretty well, everything looks pretty nice and smooth. But if we're gonna do an actual render, it's just like it's just not gonna look pretty, those facetings, right? And we can easily get rid of them while still having a clean topology. Just by going a little bit high on the density. And it's not, oh, because now it's pretty high poly that makes it a bad topology. The only thing that's really important is that it's nice and clean. So you can see this looks nice and clean. We do gotta edit that a little bit. This looks nice and clean, just need some editing. But now if we take a look in Marmoset, this is just gonna look so much nicer. And just gonna give it that extra edge over a topology that's just a little bit lower. If anything, it's more difficult to go a little bit higher, because you need to worry about subdividing this topology one more time. And match that up, so we can make the topology a little bit more even in the resolution. And even though we don't have deformation, still try to get like a nice flow, because it just looks nice and it's gonna help a bit out with the shading, of course. But of course you want to get it, when you look at your low poly at the end, you should be thinking like, oh damn, that looks nice, clean and satisfying. That's kind of what you want to try to capture. And I think we can keep it the cleanest if we just add an extra edge here and a triangle. We can take this, we can do an extrude. Now we can do one more extrude. And that's what I mean with modeling out your low poly. You can see that we can use traditional modeling methods to really quickly get that block out going. Now let's just smooth this all out. And let's edge flow. Again, don't want to touch that. Spend a lot of time lining that up right, so it'd be a shame to ruin that. Cannot really touch that. Let's put in one more triangle. Just so we can even out that topology. And then the way you want to put in triangles to keep the meshes nice and clean. Here you can see we don't really have too much triangles. And then after those edges, like this edge line, this is the one that I'm gonna connect my triangles to. So you can see here we have triangle, here we have triangle here. Just by keeping it a little bit more consistent, it's gonna make the topology look a little bit more professional. Once in a while I like to go and subdivide, kind of have a look. See, this is still pretty uneven. That should fix itself when we do the edge flow. I think this might look a little bit better. I'm satisfied. If not, we can take away again later. So at this point, let's start cutting in the panels here. Let me think. Yeah, that's a good point. Stop doing it now, I think. First, let's match the belt here a little bit better. So I'm just gonna put one like that. Just line it up really tight to the features. Over here we should have one. Now the one problem that we're gonna run into, if we subdivide this, you can see that it completely loses that shape. So we're gonna have to do the same that we did here. Go into crease editor, and take this. And these edges you add. Show why that's not happening. And now if we subdivide this, you can see now it's keeping its shape nicely. So now all that we have to do is delete this one. Then we can take this one and add a bevel. Now if we smooth shade all, you can see that we now have a really nice detailed low poly. So there's something that we need to do everywhere where we cut in features. So right here, add, just add all those features in there. Notice that we don't add this because it should be smoothed out when we subdivide. Don't need that one. So I want you to really pay attention to if we subdivide this now. See, this becomes smoothed out. Now if we just add this, now it keeps its shape. Get rid of that one. I don't have one in here. I'll try and match this up. And let's add this one. See how well it keeps the shape now. And add those. See, now it keeps the shape well when it's applied. And don't worry about shading, we'll fix that later. We think I'm gonna get rid of that thingy that we added. That looks a little bit better. I'll probably triangulate it like this at the final. And again, because we have the export scripts, at any time you're wondering how it looks like, just go UV, mapping and vertex, UV, just really fast. Now we can do A, we can get a marmoset, do a really quick bake. That way you can kind of see how your features are coming in and what it's keeping here. But this works better when you don't have to subdivide again. So I'm just gonna go over the mesh and start capturing all those panels. And again, if you're working on like a game character, you're gonna put it actually in game, then you don't always need to do this. Like, it will depend on how much polygon budget you'll have. This for characters that are a little bit on the higher side. But we do use this in actual production. Especially now with Unreal Engine 5. Now that we can go with way high poly counts, we can add way more polys to characters. For example, let's say we have an environment. So this is our screen. And then first it used to be, let's say, we can have 3 million on the screen at once rendered. And then let's say red is gonna be the environment and all the props, which is gonna take most of the poly count up for most projects. So let's say the environment, we're gonna allocate 2.7 million poly count on the screen to that. So then we have all this stuff, it's all red, and that's all fancy environment stuff and nice looking props. That's all need to be rendered, all those polygons. And then let's say, then for the budget we have let's say in yellow we have 0.3 mil left for characters, so that's 300k. So now we can say we have one main character in the scene. It's gonna be a happy little guy, give him some hair. And since he's the main character, he's gonna have let's say 100k, which means we have 200k left for NPC characters at the screen at once. These are gonna be some NPCs. And maybe they have a sword to fight a hero character. So now we used up all the budget that we can render at once, the 3 million, and we cannot really put too much polygons in the characters. But now let's say with Unreal Engine 5 with Nanite, we can lower the environment resources way down, because we don't need to render those actual polygons. Now instead of having just a budget of, let's say, 300k for the characters, now maybe we can put this budget to 1 million for the characters, which means now we can put double the amount of polygons that we used to in the characters, even though Nanite doesn't work with meshes that deform and whatever. But because we can save on the poly count on other parts of the game, now we can add that poly count to other parts of the game, which means we can hire this initial poly count that we used to work with for characters, and then we can make it way higher, which means that we can now be a little bit more fancy than what we used to be on games, so we can more easily bevel all this and maybe add an extra edge here to capture more of the shape, because we can put twice as much now. But of course it's going to be very dependent on the actual project that you're working with and how the resources are going to be divided. But again, most of you guys are probably working on your own personal projects and not actual game titles, so we don't really need to worry about it. I just want you to know that the poly count can be way higher nowadays with technology evolving. much is done. I think I'll add an... Not sure if I want to do that. So if you're not sure, we can make 2 duplicates. Now let's say on one we bevel this. Go ahead and edit that edge flow as well. Then let's apply subdivision. Then this one, let's not do that. Everything is a little bit faster, so I like it. Again, for a game this is plenty. But for a nice render I prefer to have something like this, I think. Just makes the density a little bit better of this. That one a little bit more square in my opinion. But I'll probably get rid of like one of them in the end. Then go for all this and edit that edge flow. So we have like a nice middle ground of the two. Then delete those. Then add a bevel to those for the shading. And that starts looking pretty nice. Save. Also, let's go ahead, save scene as. Just gonna put this as 0, 2. So I do like to have incremental saves here as well. So I'm not worried about capturing this. We're gonna add the thickness later when everything's more decided. Adding thickness is really easy. You'll see when we do it that it's super simple. I'm gonna add this to my second screen. Just know when something like that pops, it's just because I am clicking add. I don't feel like opening and closing it all the time, as it's a little bit annoying. So let's put in some detail here. Actually, let's redo that. We should do that here. Let's also cut in this piece. You can see most stuff just figures itself out when you put something, the next piece pops up and it's just really easy to add. So try to get this as close as you can. So also have fold, I'm just gonna add another thingy here because we're later gonna cut in the folds like this to add some more detail. We should definitely do that after the subdivide. Now let's do like this. And one more time, the idea that I have when creating portfolio pieces, I pretty much model out one how I would do it normally, and then I'd subdivide it once and refine that. And if you feel like you're cheating for some reason and you're like, oh, it's not gonna be an actual game ready match, what you can do is you can use this as like an LOD. So first you model out LOD 1, and then for the for like the nice render you'd use like an LOD 0, or you can say cinematic model, and then you subdivide this and you work further on it. I think it's not it's definitely not needed. It's just a lot of wasted time, in my opinion, if it's for a portfolio. Nobody's gonna look to your character and say like, oh wow, that character is so amazing because it only has 50k polys. The only reason why you need to worry about poly count is because the game otherwise won't run well if you go over your budget. But we don't have to worry about that here. Also, if we add more poly count and some high texture sizes, the portfolio piece is still gonna hold up a little bit better in, let's say, 3 years from now, when, let's say, in 3 years, maybe the standard of games is this high as a low poly, or maybe even in 3 years it's gonna be like, we're all gonna be working with meshes like this for games, you know? And if we then do our renders like this, it's just in 3 years it's gonna look super outdated. So it's also nice that we can keep the a little bit better with time. Sometimes, let's say you browse an art station and now you see like a character and you think, oh, that looks great, but it does look very outdated, like the texel density and the poly count. That's something that we can kind of avoid by going a little bit higher. And also, of course, it's just gonna make your render look nicer, which we all want. We want to end up with a nice looking character or prop, whatever you're making. Of course, you don't want to go overboard with poly count. Let's say something like this. It's super excessive and it's ridiculous. And that's gonna show you don't really know what you're doing for game ready. But this definitely shows that you still know what you're doing, but that you decided to go for a little bit of a high poly count for a nice render. So don't go too crazy with it. So you can see how we really went from that simple block out to cutting out shapes and refining it. also start battling this, try to get it later. It's better to have the points floating a little bit above the mesh than in the mesh. So now we can easily go with Quattro and put them right on there. The Quattro is just like added edge flow, but in a brush form. It's pretty nice. See here, they become really stretched. So I think we're gonna have to add like 2 more here. Someone try to avoid any stretched squares. They should be nice and square. Now over here we can start editing that edge flow. Or we can do edge slide. Just slide it down a bit. We can rotate that. Now that looks a little bit more even squared. I think we need 1 more here. So again, here we have triangles, so I'm gonna put 1 after this edge as well. Don't want to change that. That looks a bit more evenly squared now. Just going back and forth and editing edge flow and edges. One thing I don't like is this pooling. I think they will connect better up here. A little bit more straight. Can get rid of those. I'm just trying to make this as straight as I can, like should be going in like a spiraling. Of course we cannot get it perfectly, but we can try to get it pretty close. Go ahead and fix that shape. Don't worry about spending a lot of time on your low. If you want to get a really nice clean low, it's just unavoidable. Just like sculpting is an art, making low polish is an art of itself as well. One is definitely more fun though, but I do think making low polish can be pretty fun as well. Because it's very satisfying once everything's looking nice and clean. Because we spent so much time preparing the mesh for retop and bake, it's not that painful. And the more high polish you make and low polish, you just kinda know what to avoid in the high, because that's gonna give you problems. So the more times you do this, the faster you also become. Because a lot of time in low poly is also discovering that your high isn't really working for a retop. They need to go back and forward to fix that. That ends up being pretty time consuming. If we went back and forth a lot of times already on different assets, we already know what we do and what we shouldn't do. Or we should do and what we shouldn't do. So we're pretty fast, so it's unavoidable the difficult parts at this point, which are gonna be these gaps here. I hate doing that. But having a little bit of depth to your load does really add a lot to the final render. And if you have like a little piece like this that's not straight, we don't need to edit edge flow again, because then it's gonna mess up some other things. We can just come in with the relax brush and relax those parts out that don't work. Make sure it's all laying on top of the surface. Make sure those features are being followed right. Increment saving is a little bit less important in my because we do have autosaves enabled here. One thing I do want you to note, you don't have to fill this all in. We can leave some n-gons because we're still gonna subdivide it. Then it will fix itself. Usually I do like to fill that out. It's definitely gonna need quite a lot of touch up though. And try to give a little bit less pull to those polys. I feel like we don't really need it here. Definitely need it here though. There's already a lot of polys going to there. So I'm gonna make that edge go here instead. I think that's already looking a little bit more clean. So we'll figure that part out after we subdivide. So I don't like how that's flowing. That's what's a little bit more clean. Sometimes if the edge flow is not going nicely, you can just add an extra loop. Gonna disable that. Now you can edit edge flow and it should not give you any problems anymore. And you can delete that. So I think it's time to finally get a little bit work done on the more challenging parts. These are the straps, of course. First I'm gonna start off with making sure everything's on the 0. So world, no live surface, no edge slide. So I'm gonna start by just cutting this in here. I'm gonna ignore that gap totally for now. So we're just doing the same, cutting in features. Now let's add thickness. So let's add the thickness here. So get rid of that. I'm getting rid of that not to save necessarily on poly count, but just to try to keep the polys more evenly squared. That's the main part that I'm worried about. Add creases. See what's happening here. And at this point I want to make sure that nothing goes under in the actual hole that we need to make. So now where the hole starts, right here, I'm gonna need to add an extra edge. To capture that curvature, I'm gonna put one more here. Do the same here. I can remove these, increasing. So we can match this. This is crease. Let's give this a crease for now to make it a little bit more clear what we're gonna do. So now anything that's in between those creases right here, you need to add some offset to them. Gonna disable live. I'm just gonna cut it like this. Gonna add an extra edge in the middle. Let's enable live again. Now I don't want to move this edge, only the one that we just created. You don't need to move it a whole lot, just add a little bit. Then we can move this here, keep it like this for topology reasons, kinda up to you to decide how you wanna do this. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna move this here so we can capture that fault later by connecting it up. I think something like this might work nicely. Now you can see we kind of have like a hole going on. So that's one way of doing it. And the other one could be, if you want to go a little bit more detailed, you could take this and then make an actual hole. So this way we can have some depth to our low poly here. But this one should be an actual hole, so we can delete that. I'm gonna take this, we extract it. Let's get it straight and send it out. See, I think we can merge this up here. This should be creased. We don't need a crease here. I'm just going to follow that topology here. And that way we can put in holes. Should crease this one as well. I can see if we subdivide it, it keeps the thickness pretty well. Yeah, that's how you can add holes to your low poly. So it's kind of the same idea, we cut them out. Now we need to do the same process for the top. First, just worry about getting that all lined up correctly. You want to start that hole at the same position, so from this one on. Actually the high poly is a bit different, so that's like a little mistake, you could say, in the high. So I'm gonna do it from this one. I think I'm gonna get rid of this to make that topology a little bit more even. Then when we subdivide, we can put that in. So again, this one is gonna have depth, not an actual hole. Because the only way you'd ever see the holes if you look at it from this, and that's an angle you'll never see. So in that case we can use depth instead of actual holes. That's gonna make the bake process a little bit easier, save some polys. But then this one should be actually cut out. Let's add the middle one. Let's add it like right here. Should be way higher. Somewhere like that. And crease. Wish we could just shift right click and say crease. It's a little bit annoying that we can't. Again, I'm not putting an extra one here because the subdivision will take care of the missing resolution here. And let's make that actual hole happen. This shouldn't decrease anymore. And this one should decrease all the way. This one should decrease as well. And you can see the shading. I want to show you if it's bothering you with like the shading not being well and pretty. One way you can fix this is you can smooth shade all, then go here, in your crease set you can right click, select members, it's going to select them all. Now we can go edge and do hard edge. That way we get a little bit better shading. Also do have some edges that shouldn't be creased. Maybe it's better to keep that crease. Yeah, I should keep those creases here. This is just so when we subdivide, it keeps a little bit more straight. See, that looks a lot nicer. Now let's repeat the same that we did for this strap, for this one. I think these are close enough to just move them a little bit so they can work. So we're gonna make the gap from this point on. I'm gonna put these here. And let's merge them up there. Now let's make the actual gap. So to do that, I'm gonna model the belt out underneath it. It doesn't need to be perfect, just something fast and quick. Smooth this. See the now? Now we can take these, do extrude, single sticky. Now we can talk about this. You can delete this. You can see by not doing retop in a retopology software, but in a modeling software, it becomes quite easy, stuff like this. Now let's match it up a little bit better. So let's delete the history. Deleting the history sometimes keeps it nice and fast. So we move this one here, make an edge. You can see adding thickness isn't too challenging, but it's a little bit annoying to do. It's gonna make the bake a little bit harder as well. But you do gotta know the right way to add thickness, because this can be a very challenging process when you're just starting out and you don't really know how to do it properly. So now on this one we can start adding the thickness. Now let's do the same here. Get rid of this one as well. I'm not triangulating this right now like this, because we're going to do a subdivision. But if this is your final law, you should definitely follow that feature there for the triangulation. Now we just bridge this all up. And you can see that now by taking more of a model approach, this pretty challenging area to retop became super easy. Let's add up creases. Okay, it's super important, those creases. So now if we smooth it, it's actually gonna keep the shape. You can see. Now we have nice topology underneath it. Let's smooth it out a little bit. You can see we can work with the inside to get a better view of areas like this. Let's go ahead and take this edge. So this one. Make sure we're getting these holes as well. And just move everything in the world and straighten that all out and zero it. So now when we're ready to do the other part, we can actually do it, and we can also kind of preview it by doing an freeze transform, then edit, duplicate special, instance, and put this to -1. I can kind of work with this, and everything we change here will be changed here as well. This can help preview the whole topology. That looks pretty clean in my opinion. It's all merged together, so that's good. I'm not gonna get too far into if you should have everything merged together like this, or if you should separate in multiple objects. It's kind of up to preference and depending on the project and blah blah. It can help with mip mapping for production, and doing LODs will be simpler because you don't have to worry about stuff not lining up well now. If we were to do these LEDs, we could just go to here and do reduce, and we'd get a good result where everything works still. And baking becomes a little bit easier because you don't need as many baking groups and whatever. So that's why I prefer to do it like this. And of course the biggest reason would be if we have like say we have t-shirt, amazing drawing skills. So this is a t-shirt, I'm only gonna draw half of it. So this is a t-shirt, right? And then over a t-shirt, let's say we have one belt going of leather, like any character has, and then another character leather belt. That's very typical. So now this leather belt, most of the times in games it's kind of it's gonna go kind of in the underlying clothing, so it's gonna intersect with it and it's gonna hop in and out. So this is a surface of a t-shirt. And then this will be the leather, it will be red. So the problem is you can model it all fine and well, but as soon as it starts moving, instead of laying good on the top, a lot of times it just kind of goes into it and you get this ugly clipping happening. By having everything just merged together, you cannot have clipping. So that can be a really big advantage for stuff that is gonna be animated. So let's see, now that we have all this, what should we work on next? Double creases look fine. Let's see if we can figure this area out a little bit more. Let's check that topology, what's that doing. There's some ugly stuff here and there. I prefer to have that happen there. I think that's a little bit better. Maybe we could do it here. I think that's gonna give us the cleanest look. I do feel like I'm gonna regret this. Let me just undo it. I think it's gonna give some problems maybe. See, I kinda wanna now let's just block this out first. See if we want to get lower here. So we should have some curvature. Now we should be following those features. Try to do something like that. At this point I'm just kind of trying and seeing what I like. I think that's a good point. Let's take this. Let's start adding all the creases. And I wish we could just shift click and crease. So here you can see a little mistake in the high. We should have made this lower. There's not too much we can do about that now. I mean we can, but I don't want to go ahead and edit the high at this point anymore. Only if it's really necessary. You can also fix it with topology. So again, we can use modeling features, sometimes a little bit easier. Let's make sure this crease as well. I think this should give us a pretty decent subdivision. Let's clean this up a little bit. We do gotta add a little bit of cut in, but I'll do that after the subdivision. See, anything that we do here is gonna be on the other side as well. Let's do a subdivision, take a look. I think that looks pretty clean. Don't like this edge here though. I don't think we can change that though. But we can mess around with it in this subdivision. See how it looks like if we make the flow into here. I don't think that's gonna be nice with having that triangle to the edge. But maybe we could then mess around with it a little bit. No. So I think this looks a little bit cleaner. It's a little bit faceted for my liking, for a nice render. So I'm gonna add one more here. And another one. This should now be super nice and rounded. See how nice and rounded it gets. Gotta push these things out a little bit. At this point we're doing like the final cleanups before we subdivide, and we work on the subdivision. This is gonna include, nah, this is not gonna include thickness. It's better if we do that after. Yeah. Just move this all out. We should also add some detailing to this part. Totally forgot about it. You can see that adds some nice changes in the height, the silhouette. Let's go ahead and bevel, increase this. You can see that adds a lot of silhouette. We can also preview this a little bit better by upping the subdivisions to make it more clean. We have a problem here, I think. that's changing quite a lot. If we have just one that's changing a lot, we can add like a sport look. I could do one here as well. I think I'm just gonna let it deform and fix it. Not entirely sure why that crease is not doing a good job though. Could be because of this, maybe? Looks a little bit more proper. Take a look here. So I think we're about ready to subdivide. Just gotta fix this part up, and then we can subdivide. And let's see, how are we gonna do this? It's like here. You can see it's a little bit slow. I'm gonna delete the history. I'm not sure why this looks different here. Yeah. Let's make sure the top and bottom side are the same. Because you want to keep the same consistency. And there's a little bit too much distance, a little mistake in the height. We can worry about fixing that later. Now let's add our final creases. I'm just gonna crease this out to the middle. Let's do some final cleanup touches. That looks pretty nice and clean to me. Of course, there's still some issues here and there. We're gonna get these out in the next subdivision. Just make sure that everything's in the middle one more time. You can see it's moving. That means it wasn't perfectly on center line, everything. Still symmetry, not sure why that's on. And now everything's well. Make sure everything's aligned pretty well. The better it's aligned, the easier the next step will be. What's that thing there? Nothing. So I think that's all good enough. So what we do now is I'm gonna make a save. Let's call this before subdiv. So if we need to, we can always go back. I'm gonna make a new one. It's gonna be final low 04. Just so we don't accidentally override it. So now we can smooth it out. One time. And let's subdivide. Let's check out what our topology is doing. So we definitely need to fix this up a lot. The rest looking pretty solid, I think. Some fixing here. So let's get to work. So the first thing I want to do is I want to delete all the edges here. So those are not needed. These are pretty easy to find, just anywhere where you have two of those crease edges. You should have one. You should delete it. Not sure what happened to the creases that we had here. That's annoying, we're gonna have to re-edit that. And I think that's about all, almost. So we had one more here. I should also have one here. Let's start by selecting all the creases and hard edge. Later we'll convert most of these hard edges to bevels, but for now we're gonna keep it like this. Let's see if we can get rid of the hard edge of the crease visibility. I think we can by going display polygons and crease vertices. So that was the one. Crease edges. So that's the one. Want you to notice they're still here. We can still select them. But now we just don't see them. So we can really focus on how the actual topology is looking like. One thing that I do like to do is show hard edges. Let's see, where should we begin? Begin by fixing this up. Okay, you want to begin with the most easy things to fix. And then work you up to the more challenging parts. See if we can match this up a little bit better. Gonna go with like a middle here. We messed up a little bit here. go ahead and fix this stuff all up. Kind of forgot about it. We're gonna use the Quattro so we can easily see through it and see what we're actually doing. Now we can delete all this. Again, if it's slow, delete the history. That should fix it. What I'm gonna do now is pretty excessive for a game asset, but I'm gonna capture that one angle change here as well. Slow again. You can also turn off history recording, so we don't have to keep deleting it and worrying about it. So that's looking a lot better. As you can see, we're getting quite ugly shading though. That's because it's not perfectly flat. So we can to face, component, disable live, just drag that out. Now you can see that's better. Not right though. Let's put on world. So now it's completely flat, getting good shading. There's an issue with the topology. That's because this should be in hard edge. Component. Now that's looking right. Something like that. Now let's go ahead and hide the earbuds. Get 0.1 in here, so we can actually kind of know what's happening here. It's pretty difficult to get into. So we can take these and slide them out. This area isn't too important. Never even see it. This doesn't need to be perfect. Sometimes easier to disable the sticky, the live surface, and then we can just easily extrude it upwards, then merge those points together. Go ahead and close that. So at this point I want to work a little bit on topology, so we don't need those. And these are the things that will show that you understand how game assets work. Like, we don't need this extra edges here. Just make them hard and we can get rid of them. Let's also go ahead and do a quick test bake, see how everything is looking. You can see how easy UVs become when we have everything merged together. It's almost a perfect UV. So you want to take this one and just get it out of the bake group. So we don't want to double bake stuff. You can see that's starting to look pretty nice. Got a little bit of an issue there. So I think this is a good test bake. So we can bake this. Now I'm gonna set up my material, so Lin. I'm gonna call this helmet MTL. Now on bump map we go file, tangent, and bump value, image name. So now we're gonna need to find that normal map that we made. So projects, pilot helmet. And we messed up the naming on this thing. So let's put this to helmet. And rebake. Now in Maya, we can change goggles to helmet and put this to raw. Then now we can preview our bake inside Maya. You see this all messed up because we need split UVs on hard edges or add a bevel. But we can get a pretty good idea of our bake at this point. Maybe I'll go as far as adding some depth to this to add some more detail, but probably just keep that baked. This is still a game asset after all. So let's go ahead and lower the poly count a little bit. I'm mostly trying to improve the flow. That flows a little bit more nicely, I think you can tell. Let's see, this is really squared. I'm gonna get rid of one of those. And then transform edge slide. Even it out a little bit. One thing that we could do is we could lower the total poly count by going here. We don't need all that stuff in here. So that's also gonna show you that you have a good understanding of game assets by doing that. do think I'll keep it actually. Let's keep it. But that could be a way to lower it really well. So you could just take entire rows like this, then do something like this. So you keep that nice smoothness here at the edge. It's quite excessive, we definitely don't need that. Like if it doesn't add anything, we can just get rid of it. Then we should make that all start at the same time. Maybe we'll that flow here. So don't forget that we can still use stuff like edit edge flow. Definitely want to put some work here. I think this looks horrible. Let's just connect this up. I think that's clean enough. Again, here we don't really need it that many, it's not adding anything. You can see I'm not too worried about how the high poly looks. I'm just cleaning our subdivision up, because we can guess more or less how it needs to look like. Say this looks unnecessary. See if we can get rid of this one. So I think that's adding too much faceting. I don't like that. So we'll keep it like this. And let's see what's next. Let's even this out. Gotta fix some hard edges. You think we have to keep that one? So let's work a little bit on matching it better. I'm not gonna cut in the fold yet. First we're gonna finish up this, because the folds are gonna be different on the symmetry side. go ahead and pop all these back. You can see retopology isn't too difficult. It's just a long tedious process to go through. But if you plan it out right, it should be pretty easy. So I'm just gonna go kind of between matching stuff and then fixing topology. I think this area needs a lot of work. We can take the brush. Let's hide the high. If we take the brush, we can easily select stuff. I'm gonna select all this and just delete it. Also, I'm gonna put this stuff here, so that I want to be able to use it with the layers, not having to go back and forward all the time. Actually, let me put it down here. Yeah, let's be down here. So I'm gonna draw like a nice topology. And now I'm gonna worry about connecting this topology up to here. So the easiest way to probably go ahead and do this is to do like an extrude. Just like this. Now we take every other edge, and we collapse that. Now right here we gotta fill these up. Now let's get rid of all these hard edges. So I'm holding down shift to keep selecting edges. And shift, right click, soften. And now we can come in with Quadra and we can relax this out a little bit. And I think you can tell this looks way cleaner than what we had before. I do think we can. Nope, we can't. Work a little bit on matching that line of the features. Now I'll fix this up by hand later without having live enabled. So let's work a little bit on what part next. Work on this here. Let's also get rid of the symmetry for now. Now let's keep it. Do like to see how it looks like this. So let's see. Start by deleting this. And I'm gonna delete it. My mouse being a little bit slow. I think this might help. That looks a lot cleaner.